Welcome back. This is PundIT Show from PhocusWire number 5. We've got another 3 to go after this, so we're almost at the halfway point through the Phocuswright Conference here in 2017. So another panel of pundits. They're going to share their views on what they've been hearing, what they're hoping to hear, and all things like that. But, you know, let's cut to the chase. It would be remiss of us, Travis, if we didn't come and talk to you first. You are everyone knows you're the CEO of Trip.com, formerly GoGoBot. And you have a new owner as of one day last week. So You're now owned by Ctrip, which is a fairly big thing, I would imagine. So let's just, we've had lots of startups here over the last day and a half who would probably love to be in your position of being acquired by such a big brand. But I mean, what's been the process from, say, well, tell us first, when did it first start, the conversation that you had with them?
Yeah, so the conversations actually started with the guys over at Skyscanner, who Ctrip acquired a year ago for $1.8 billion. And we were really talking to them about a commercial arrangement, a commercial partnership for them to use our data. And I think as we started talking, I was spending time with Gareth, and we both were talking about our visions for the future of travel and how mobile-centric everything was going to be. And I think we really just suddenly realized we had a very good alignment in terms of vision for where things were going. And so we started a deeper conversation with Skyscanner, and then the Ctrip guys came in and they wanted to come meet with us. So it really took, the conversations took 9 months before we actually turned it into sort of a final deal. We were sort of vaguely talking about things, and then it suddenly got very specific in the summer.
So, and then presumably the last couple of weeks have been pretty scary, or I mean, how do you feel when this is a company you founded, that you've led for a few years, and all of a sudden you're selling it? I mean, how does that feel as an owner?
I think we're very happy about how things ended up, and I think in terms of the future, what we were really quite interested in was finding a company that understands the vision that we've been trying to build for the last 7 years. And we very much believe in this future that's mobile-centric, that's personalized, and that the traveler shouldn't have to type and search, that we have the technology that we ought to be able to recommend the right things to you at the right time. And I think the guys at Ctrip are very future forward. They're very mobile centric. The Skyscanner guys, same way. So I think there's a great opportunity with these guys to really build out this bigger vision. And now with Ctrip, they've got the deep pockets to make sure we can really focus on the big picture.
Okay, has your head stopped spinning yet?
It's still spinning. There's a lot to learn for me about how these businesses work and how do we work together. And they have a lot of expertise that we don't have. We have a lot of expertise they don't have. And so we're figuring out how do we actually bring those things together and bring product to market quickly.
Okay.
So yeah, it's still spinning a bit.
Okay, that's great. Well, let us know when it stops spinning.
Yeah.
And maybe talk some other details. But so to the rest of the panel, Adam Gill. So you've seen a lot of the things that have been going on the last few days. So what stood out for you?
I think
the top line.
What's interesting, if I think back to last year, then switch to this year, is how there's a definite tone around tours and activities this year, and it's almost like I'm probably doing a disservice, but it's almost like the announcement at the same time as Phocuswright last year from Airbnb about how they were going in tours and activities almost tripped something. Now, obviously, a lot of the guys that we've seen here this week so far have been doing more this stuff for longer than a year, but it's really started to put a focus on experiential stuff, I think, for people to focus on. So yeah, I've picked up a lot of that, I think, from what
It's interesting that you say that may have been the trigger for this latest wave of things. Was Airbnb this time last year announcing trips?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Something that I was working on was starting to go down that route, thinking about more about than just the hotels, and I think this was mentioned this morning actually, more than about the hotels, and more about how you're going to get there, but what are you going to do when you get there, and starting to build vacations, holidays around what you do when you get there. So, and I think probably maybe Airbnb just refocused that attention a little bit more last year by saying that as a big name, coming out and saying we're going to really focus on it.
Okay, Miriam, not a loaded question, but can you tell us what has excited you over the last couple of days?
Personally, for me, I think that the reason I'm in this business, in travel, I happen to be in business travel, but my love is travel, and I think that one of the reasons that brings us all together is that we believe that travel has a higher purpose in this world. I believe that it contributes to good things to happen in this world. So for me to see companies like Uplift and what was the other one? I just mentioned their name. Affirm,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
These companies that are finding ways to make travel more accessible to folks that might not otherwise have found a way to travel in the past. So when I see companies like that are trying to bring travel to a larger population, to more people, that's what excites me. I agree with the tours and activities. I think the success Redeem had yesterday, Alex and Leith from Redeem, it's great to see that success, and it's great to see that focus on tours and activities. So that's what's excited me.
Yeah, and Travis, I mean, if your head had stopped spinning for a second and you caught some of the things that were going on in there yesterday and today, we're near the end of that kind of startup pitch process. What has caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, the shift to tours and activities, I think, is something that is clearly happening. I think it's the right time. Now that mobile's front and center, it makes sense. But I also am just constantly amazed that there are people that are still finding ways to innovate in even things like hotel booking. So like BCD Travel, where they're sort of running all these different searches. It's a brilliant idea, and one of these things where there's just a clear inefficiency there that's happening, and I don't know, if the OTAs will let them continue to run that market, but
Why wouldn't they?
good question. It can take margin out of pockets, but I think ultimately, it's a great idea, and for consumers, it's the kind of innovation that technology can bring and really help drive prices down.
Right, okay. So those are the things you've seen and you're excited by, but what do you think is missing?
Innovation for senior citizens.
Okay.
And I know that it's strange to hear me say that, but that's what I've been talking about every time I step outside is, we keep talking about millennials, and then the analysts will tell you that millennials aren't who has the money and who is spending it in leisure space.
Okay.
And the vast majority of money being spent in leisure space is by baby boomers who are retiring and spending their children's inheritance. And we don't see anything catered to them, nothing at all.
How do you cater for them?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's technology or process or a new product.
so have an idea.
I think you've got an interesting mix there. So if I think about actually my mother, who's exactly that demographic.
My parents,
yes,
right?
exactly that demographic. That she hasn't gone through a working career with a computer. So her first touch point of the internet is an iPhone, which is exactly the same as the millennials whose first touch point of the internet is an iPhone. And she won't do emails or anything from a computer. It's all from her iPhone. There's definitely, and then I think about her friends, it's exactly the same. They're all there. They do stuff internet. So you've got an interesting blend now where you've got a whole bunch of people in the middle, if you like, in maybe in our age group who are used to being desktop first and then mobile phone second. But at either ends, you've got people who are used to thinking mobile first.
That's right. And we see a lot of demographics attacked here, right? I mean, we've seen the limited mobility or the handicapped accessible type travel startup. We saw it last year. We see a startup, I think, at the WIC conference, right? We saw a startup around Muslim travelers and that growing group of travelers. But I have not seen anything that addresses my parents at all.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, senior citizens is definitely a sexy space from a dollar's perspective, at least. But for me, I'm more.
With GoGoBot, the first incarnation of Trip, was it specifically targeting millennials?
We're millennial. Our user base is very millennial.
But why is that?
Because we're mobile centric, and we do see that young people are starting with the phone. They interact with the phone differently because that's their sort of first point of call, and they haven't built up all these habits around the desktop, so you can really start to bring new experiences. And
I suppose it was an inherently social product as well, and
so
maybe that part of it.
It's social, and where I think a lot of the innovations come. We're based out in the middle of Silicon Valley, and the things that everyone's talking about is how is voice going to disrupt, particularly with now things like the Amazon Show where it has a screen on it, and AI, and who's going to really lead and win on sort of predictive recommendations, so that I don't have to spend lots of time thinking. The blockchain space, and there's obviously a ton of hype around blockchain right now, but it is a pretty disruptive technology that has the potential to suck a lot of the margins out of the travel space. So I haven't seen anyone really making any big moves in any of those spaces. A lot of people are sort of playing around, and I think there's...
On that point, though, they don't need to with the voice, arguably, because Amazon does it for them. So they can, if they can just build interfaces like Skyscanner was one of the beta testers for the Amazon Echo, wasn't it? I believe they had the Skyscanner app was there. So if you're a brand, do you just need to go to connect into the higher power that is Amazon and not have to worry about building the technology?
I think the risk for the travel industry, and I see this, we have an Amazon Echo in our house, and my kids, they're growing up being able to talk to Alexa and get answers, and that's becoming a native way for them to interface with computers. And the risk for the travel industry is Amazon controls that funnel completely now in the way that Google controls the search funnel. Everyone's building their Alexa apps, but nobody's getting much use because the discovery is very poor. It's hard to discover technologies on Amazon today. And it's going to turn down to, what does Amazon want to do? Do they want to build their own travel thing? Maybe they'll buy, a travel company. Could that lock everyone out of this new market?
I mean, that's interesting because they did try a few years ago, didn't they? They started dipping their toe in the water and then just kind of reined it back in 3 or 4 months later.
There was one of the workshops yesterday, and I forget the name of which one it was, but they showed some data around the adoption of voice search in travel, and out of the different segments, it was the least adopted compared to, say, retail or the other elements. So I totally agree with you that voice search is, and it was briefly mentioned at the end of this morning's session that's coming. So
I was pessimistic until they started including screens with these voice-activated computers, and that's a game changer.
Yeah, so voice and corporate travel, business people on the go rushing through an airport, I mean, is that stuff that your people are starting to ask about, or is it not even
they're
on
starting
their
to
radar?
ask about it. In fact, we're already starting to create prototypes and examples of voice-based search with Alexa, actually, for corporate travel. I, however, I'm going to be a little more moderate in this space because I don't think necessarily we have fully figured out how to interact with phones to begin with. We saw, right? I mean, we haven't yet reached, I think, the full potential of tap swipe, right? So, we saw a startup.
Why not, though?
I don't know.
What other potential does tap swipe
Here's an
have?
example of something right that just sort of blew my mind, and it's sort of silly that it did, but we saw a startup, I think, in Battleground even like last year that was trying to do the Tinder of hotel search. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's been around forever, right? But we were all like, what? That makes tons of sense. And I don't think we've yet even figured out the full interaction of what we can do with these devices.
You mean more gamification?
It could be gamification. It could be just more gestures, right? It could be gesture-based. I'm not necessarily a full believer that speaking in full paragraphs, parsing that language into intent is always the most efficient way to do things. And so I think that we're still experimenting with that. I think that there are lots of people who are spending a lot of time studying how do we get a human to get from point A to point B in a decision-making process the fastest. And it's not always having a conversation live.
Right, so sort out the bits that still need sorting out before you get into other bits like voice search. Okay.
It's actually an interesting thought, thinking about it, that a lot of companies spend a lot of time with their website user experience and starting to personalize it based upon your user behavior. But the format of mobile phones is pretty consistent across all the different devices. That isn't, to your point, Miriam, isn't particularly bespoke in terms of how different users may use it. So millennials may use it completely differently to the baby boomers, for example. So maybe that's part of it.
And I take issue with the whole personalization thing also. I wonder about, naturally, I wonder, like, what's the point of personalizing? Most travelers, they deal with their travel supplier once a year, if they're lucky, and it's usually Disney World, which is fantastic, right? But, I mean, the lengths we go to personalize in the leisure space is astounding to me, given the fact that a leisure traveler deals with their travel supplier so rarely.
Right, okay, so Travis
so
is smirking a little bit there.
So I think personalization is massively important. I agree, it's for people that are traveling once a year, it's much harder because you just don't have as much data. But the reality is, we've been focused on personalization for a long time, and the reason we do is when you read the interviews and look at the data of people on their travel search process, it's horribly painful. They're just spending, all the models of the big travel companies, with the big OTAs and all those things. It's like, the basic model is, hey, we've got a gigantic database of every travel product in the world, and here it is, go have fun and spend your next 2 days digging through that to try and find the thing that you care about. Okay. Whereas a traveler, you sort of want to be able to say, hey, I like sort of cool boutique hotels, and I want to be in a part of town that's walkable with cafes, and show me that stuff that I care about, or I've got kids and so I want to be close to some of these attractions and want to be in a safe neighborhood where we can go out. And so the kinds of things that people want are not reflected in the products that we're giving them. They want to be able to have something that reflects what the trip is about and who they are. And I think the companies that can win in that space and really can provide people with the right products and save them from having to waste time sort of reading reviews and that kind of thing are the companies that are ultimately going to win the loyalty of the traveler.
There was a presentation yesterday where they said we will only ever give 3 options, 3 choices to you as a result of a search. You need personalization because that 3 options for you may not be the same 3 options for me, for Travis, or for Kevin. So you need, that's where...
I'm pretty sure that was a business travel supplier though, wasn't it? It was Mezzi.
Was it Mezzi? But,
Yeah.
but even in that, there's probably some...
Right. Well, in business travel, personalization is everything. We handle every business trip that traveler takes every single time they travel. Every business trip I've ever taken in my life, in my previous life, and in the career I have now, has been booked by BCD Travel. So, a business travel agency has all the incentive in the world to personalize everything about the experience because we have such an intimate connection, repetitive connection with our traveler. But I think a regular kind of leisure traveler, a typical leisure traveler, not the ones in our bubble here at Phocuswright, right, that travel once a year and it's vacation in Florida. I think that those folks, it's a little hard to be preemptive personalization as opposed to allowing things like filtering, affinity relationships and things like that help personalize the experience once you get there.
Okay. What else in corporate travel are your travel buyers and the corporates actually asking for when it comes to tech and...
So I think that the biggest thing that we're always looking for, that our clients are always looking for, our travelers more importantly, is the concept of disruption, right? And helping our suppliers keep the promise that they made to the traveler when the traveler made the reservation in the first place, right? So there are the Freebirds of the world, and there's Service, which we saw, I believe, yesterday. There are a variety of suppliers coming up, even like AirHelp, et cetera, that are finding ways to, when something goes wrong, finding solutions to correcting that problem, whether it's recovering from a disruption, whether it's seeking compensation for a disruption that you've had from a supplier, recovering from an interruption, or even a self-disruption, right? We think about disruptions often in business travel as irregular air operations. But in fact, it includes being walked from a hotel. It includes your child breaking their leg and you need to go home early. You miss the train, right? So I think that, and we've seen a few of them here this week, and we see them every year. And I think that's something that we're always looking at is how do we, at scale, find technology that can help our clients and our travelers recover from disruptions and deal with the spikes in demand that come from disruptions that are out of our control, like weather events that affect 13 regional airports that we now need to recover from. So those are always things that we're really interested in.
Okay, so we're going to end up with the Q&A lottery.
I am not afraid.
You're not afraid. So
Nope.
31 questions in here. Don't ask me why there's 31. I meant to do 30, but there's 31. Put your hands in, put out a question, read it, answer it, pass it on to Travis.
Read it and answer it. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the biggest threat to the travel industry? Geopolitical events.
Okay.
What are the gaps in your knowledge/experience in the travel industry? They are many and broad.
Okay.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how lucky are you? Is that referring to travel and business and travel, or generally in life? I don't know. Generally in life,
love, probably.
I think I'm pretty lucky. There's always room for improvement, but probably an 8.
An 8?
Yeah, always room for improvement, I think.
But a good person to know.
Yeah.
Does the industry or travelers drive evolution? The industry drives evolution.
Interesting, because someone disagreed with that one. They said
I always refer to the, if Henry Ford asked people what they wanted, they would have said, build us a faster horse.
Yeah. Travis?
What is the biggest opportunity in the travel industry?
Senior citizens.
No. Although I think there's a big opportunity. I think emerging markets, so China is obviously massive. But all of Asia is incredibly exciting. Africa is starting to come out. I think there's a lot of opportunity there that's largely untapped.
Okay, and you get the last one, Adam.
How much of your work time do you try to keep unscheduled?
Yeah.
Probably most of it, actually.
Okay.
A bit of a lucky space, trying to keep most of it unscheduled.
Okay, so thank you very much to our panel of pundits again. So Adam, Travis, and Miriam, thank you very much.